to be able to have any memories with them that are my own. And if I could...
It's 8:43. This is 91.7 WVXU. Water. It's both cheap and precious. Something we literally cannot live without. But what happens when sources run dry or cost too much? You can no longer easily afford it. That's coming up. Also, information about retail sales numbers for October. They were released today. Just as a number of big retailers are reporting on their third quarter earnings, what the numbers could say about the overall health of the economy. It's all coming up in the Marketplace Morning Report in 10 minutes on 91.7 WVXU. Reagan eastbound after West Galbraith. There's a wreck. Traffic is slow from Winton. Northbound 7175 at Buttermilk. A broken down vehicle on the right shoulder. In the Dayton area, Austin Boulevard at Springboro Pike, a wreck. And Vine between 4th and West 6th and 5th between Race and Vine closed because of those bricks that fell from the Carew Tower. They're still making sure that area is safe.
WVXU goes wherever you do. Listen to 91.7 online at iHeartRadio.com and on your mobile device through the iHeartRadio app.
Today's programming is made possible in part by a grant from Harriet and Ben Kaufman, in appreciation of the entire WVXU news team for providing listeners with smart, timely, accurate, and trustworthy reporting and conversations.
Hi, it's Steve Inskeep. And I'm Michelle Martin. If you've been thinking about helping this station, but now's not the right time for a financial gift, how about donating a vehicle you don't need instead? It's free to you and could be worth hundreds of dollars in support.
To donate your car, go to WVXU.org under Ways to Give.
9 morning weather, mostly sunny, pleasant today. The high temperature 65, clear, dry tonight down to 39. 38 degrees now.
I'm Lucy May. On the next Cincinnati edition, kids are spending more time than ever before on YouTube. The platform has dominated over television and streaming for their attention. We'll discuss the impacts. Plus, we'll talk to an expert about decoding the hidden language of cats. Today at noon on Cincinnati Edition on 91.7 WVXU.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from the Pew Charitable Trusts, sharing how communities are restoring trust and solving problems on the After the Fact podcast, available at pewtrusts.org/afterthefact. From the Lodestar Foundation, inspired by the principle that helping someone else less fortunate is a path to a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. Learn more at lodestarfoundation.org. And from listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. Emmy Martinez. I'm Steve Inskeep. In Mexico, about 10 women and girls are killed every day by partners or family members. The Mexican singer-songwriter Silvana Estrada wrote about this in Si Me Mata, or If They Kill Me. Her song is nominated for an award in tomorrow's Latin Grammys. Reporter James Frederick spoke with her in Mexico City.
Silvana Estrada still remembers the first lesson she learned about being a woman. She was 5 or 6 years old and watched men at a construction site catcalling her mother near their home in Veracruz, Mexico.
I saw my mother's reaction, and I felt she was so scared and so uncomfortable with her body and so ashamed.
We spoke at a coffee shop in Mexico City where she told me another lesson her mom taught her years later.
And you need to say no many times, thousands of times, in order that they understand that no is no.
As a young female musician traveling alone to play small gigs across Mexico, Estrada came across a story on social media. A young woman around her age had taken a cab and was later found dead. But most of the online chatter blamed the victim for being out late by herself.
What shocked me the most was to see all the comments and all the media trying to make her guilty of her own death.
A series of similar cases sparked a hashtag on social media, Si Me Matan, If They Kill Me, in which women pushed back against the idea of being responsible for their own murder. It sparked something in Estrada, and she started writing.
Crecí con miedo
She sings, "I grew up in fear, but even so, I went out alone to see the stars, to love life."
I wrote that part like in a day, and then the second part took me like 2 years because I was so angry.
In the second half of the song, something changes. Estrada sings, "If they kill me, I'll become a seed for those to come. Now no one silences us, nothing contains us."
It took me 2 years to understand that what I wanted the most was to keep my own hope. I'm so grateful with this song because it took me to a place that I was needing so much.
This song has grown into something the 26-year-old never expected. It's become an anthem of defiance and a staple in women's marches across Latin America, where signs show the lyric, "They've taken so much from us that they've even taken our fear." There have been many adaptations of the song, but none as grand as this one, performed by the feminist collective at the Catalonia College of Music in Barcelona. But most moving of all for Estrada was the music video she made for the song.
I think it's the most beautiful experience that I've ever lived in my life.
She sits with her guitar in an empty courtyard. She starts playing and singing. As the camera spins around her, Estrada comes face to face with a series of women. Old, young, one rubbing her pregnant belly. She performed the song live for each woman, and inevitably, every session ended in tears.
It taught me so much about empathy and about community and about music. Really, it's insane. We were all feeling just because a song. It's insane. Music is insane. I love it.
For NPR News, I'm James Frederick in Mexico City.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Stephen Skeep.
And I'm A. Martinez.
Good morning. It's 8:50. This is 91.7 WVXU. In 10 minutes on the BBC News Hour, the debate over whether hospitals can be battlegrounds as Israeli forces enter Gaza's largest hospital. Could a Californian meeting warm relations between President Biden and President Xi, and the bird of the century that caused Tiki pandemonium? You'll have to find out when you listen on the BBC News Hour starting at 9 o'clock on 91.7 WVXU. Reagan eastbound after West Galbraith, there's a wreck. Traffic slow from Winton, Miamisburg, Centerville Road at Washington Village Drive, a wreck. Northbound 7175 at Buttermilk Pike, a broken down vehicle on the right shoulder, and a wreck Austin Boulevard at Springboro Pike.
Support comes from the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine and UC Physicians, where coordinated teams of experienced medical intensivists provide advanced, integrated, and comprehensive intensive care to the critically ill and injured. Learn more at med.uc.edu/indispensable.
Support comes from Cincinnati's Ronald McDonald House, which keeps families with critically ill children together while they seek life-saving medical care far from home. Your support gives them the care they need and eases financial and emotional burdens. You can learn more about ways to give at rmhcincinnati.org. That's rmhcincinnati.org.
Local support for Marketplace Morning Report comes from Bartlett Wealth Management. Bartlett knows its female clients have diverse financial needs. That is why Bartlett launched We Invest, a program by and for women that provides resources for women pursuing their goals for a purpose-driven approach to wealth. More at bartlett1898.com/WeInvest.
Retail sales are limping their way into the holidays.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Total Wine and More, where shoppers can find a great Cabernet, bourbon, or sparkling wine for everyone on their list this holiday season. Total Wine and More. Drink responsibly. Be 21. And by Palo Alto Networks. Palo Alto Networks delivers what's next in cybersecurity innovation to protect today's digital way of life. Learn more at PaloAltoNetworks.com.
From Marketplace, I'm Sabri Benishore in for David Brancaccio. Retail sales in October fell 0.1%. That is a turnaround from September when they had increased 0.9%. Prices at the wholesale level just fell 0.5% in October. All of this supports a muted outlook for the holiday shopping season. Marketplace's Nova Sappho has more.
Retail sales are expected to increase during this holiday shopping period, but likely at the slowest pace in several years, and just about enough only to keep up with inflation. So many retailers are being cautious heading into the final months of the year. Take forecasts yesterday from Home Depot. In a call with analysts, merchandising chief Billy Bastek said they're already seeing shoppers pulling back a bit.
We saw a continuation of a trend that we have been observing throughout the year, with softness in certain big-ticket, discretionary-type purchases. Instead of engaging in larger projects, customers continue to take on smaller projects.
That kind of lackluster spending is unlikely to power Home Depot to a strong year-end finish. For the first time since the Great Recession, the company predicted that its sales will decline this year. The nation's biggest retailer, Walmart, skipped the usual seasonal worker hiring binge heading into the holidays, saying it had enough people on staff already. Meanwhile, Macy's, which has also signaled the likelihood of slowing sales, opened up fewer seasonal positions. I'm Nova Sappho for Marketplace.
The House of Representatives has passed a stopgap funding measure to avoid a government shutdown Friday. The bill does not include funding for Ukraine or Israel, border security measures, or additional funding for a federal nutrition program for women and children. Decisions on those get delayed. It is now up to the Senate, which has till Friday to pass the bill. Let's do the numbers. Dow Jones, S&P, and NASDAQ futures are all up in the 3 to 0.6% range. Dow futures up 120 points. The yield on the 10-year Treasury is 4.494%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Amazon Business. From small business to big enterprise and everything in between, Amazon Business helps simplify the supplies buying process. Amazon Business, your partner for smart business buying. And by Schwab. Schwab offers investors choices like full-service wealth management, self-directed investing options, and trading on Thinkorswim. More at schwab.com. And by UKG, an HR, payroll, and workforce management solution designed to help make a fairy tale workplace a reality. UKG, our purpose is people.
Water is both cheap and precious, something we literally cannot live without, yet often take for granted. But what happens when it runs dry, or when water becomes unaffordable? That's what our Climate Solutions podcast, How We Survive, is digging into this season. Host and senior correspondent Amy Scott has an episode out today about a community near Scottsdale, Arizona, that found its water supply cut off. She recently spoke with Marketplace Morning Report host David Brancaccio.
All right, so this community, Rio Verde Foothills, what happened to its water supply?
Yeah, so this is a community of about 2,000 homes scattered through the foothills outside of Scottsdale, Arizona. It's a really pretty place, but it's in an unincorporated part of Maricopa County. Most residents have wells, but about 500 households rely entirely on hauled water. As you said, water purchased from the city of Scottsdale and delivered in big trucks. But in January of this year, Scottsdale cut them off as part of a plan to address the ongoing drought. We've been following one couple, Lee Harris and her husband Frank Avril. They went from spending about $130 to fill up their big underground tank, which lasts about 5 to 6 weeks, to more than $500 a delivery, mostly because of the extra diesel costs. And they're on a limited income and just couldn't afford it.
It's wild. How have they been managing?
Well, I want to play you some sound of when I first met Lee back in June. I was walking up to her front door and noticed all these plastic bottles lined up outside. Turns out they were filled with rainwater that they had been collecting to flush their toilets.
They have to promise me to not think untoward of us, because we've been literally camping in this house for 6 months now with no real running water.
They ended up going almost 10 months, borrowing tap water from work and from friends, eating a lot of microwavable meals, collecting rainwater to flush the toilets. But, you know, there wasn't much rain at all in Arizona this summer, and they were getting pretty worried.
You are dangling a solution ahead. Before we get that, how common is this phenomenon of hauling water in America because the pipes have run dry?
Well, one of the problems is that no one is really tracking this. A lot of rural homes in Arizona that don't have wells or where the water quality isn't very good pay to haul potable water. A loophole in Arizona groundwater law allows home builders to sell homes without a guaranteed water supply on land that's split into 5 or fewer lots. These are known as wildcat developments. We also spoke to a resident, Christy Jackman, who runs a horse and donkey boarding business in Rio Verde foothills. She has well water, and she blames the home builders for this crisis.
Problem is, you don't put houses for sale when there's no water underneath you in a place like this. You just gotta build smart.
So there's a movement in the state to close the wildcat loophole, but so far it hasn't gone anywhere.
All right, so you host the Climate Solutions podcast, How We Survive. What are some of the medium-term solutions?
Well, for Rio Verde foothills, in the end, the Arizona legislature stepped in. They allowed the community to create a sort of quasi-government agency to buy water from a private company, deliver it through Scottsdale's infrastructure. Lee and Frank got their first delivery just a few weeks ago. But that's what this season is about. It's really looking into how we're going to adapt and find other sources of water if we want to keep living in increasingly arid places.
Marketplace's Amy Scott is host of How We Survive. The podcast is out now, wherever you sign up for podcasts. Amy, thank you.
Thanks so much, David.
That was Marketplace's David Brancaccio there. You can learn more about How We Survive at marketplace.org. In New York, I'm Sabri Benishore with the Marketplace Morning Report. From 8 p.m., American Public Media.
Good morning. It's a minute before 9 o'clock. This is 91.7 WVXU. Sunny and pleasant today, getting up to 65. Right now it's 40 in Cincinnati.
Support comes from Historic Milford Association in charming downtown Milford, Ohio, where you can shop and eat among a variety of locally owned and distinctive boutiques, galleries, shops, and restaurants, all while enjoying your favorite Dora drink and strolling past storefronts decorated in the holiday spirit. Presenting sponsors Lovin's Insurance and Cincinnati Distilling. Learn more at downtownmilford.com. Support comes from the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra presenting El Nino Nativity Reconsidered, a CSO-proof program November 30th at Music Hall. A new arrangement by conductor Christian Wright, John Adams' opera oratorio is transformed into an intimate setting for chamber orchestra, telling the Nativity story from Mary's perspective. Tickets at cincinnatysymphony.org. Presenting sponsors Irwin and Melinda Simon.
91.7 WVXU Cincinnati and 88.5 WMUP Oxford. News from Cincinnati Public Radio and NPR. Welcome to NewsHour from the BBC World Service. I'm Nuala McGovern. Israeli soldiers have entered the largest hospital in the Gaza Strip, with the army saying it has killed 5 Hamas gunmen outside the complex. We hear from a doctor inside the hospital.
They've been killing people slowly in Shifa Hospital, and now they want to give us some saline solution and dressing stuff.
Alright, I'm going to Dayton now for GIS Day, meeting some fellow geography planning nerds. It's hard to get out of here. heading north to Dayton on I-75. On our right here is the Cincinnati Premium Outlets Outdoor Mall. And we're in the City of Monroe corporate limits. We're about 27 minutes from the Dayton Beer Company. We're going to celebrate GIS Day. And network, chit chat, have dinner, maybe. These are some of the colleagues I used to work with when I was at the sheriff's office. Now we're passing through Middletown on I-75. Hey, sir? Sir?
Appreciate you, my brother. Bless you and have a beautiful
You're welcome.
day.
Have a good one. Alright. Man. This is not a turnaround, is it? Is it one way? Oh, it is a one way. And I'm going the wrong way. Well. Whose turn is it? My turn?
maintain an agreement that there is a one China policy, and that I'm not going to change that. That's not going to change. And so that's about the extent to which we discussed it. Next question, sorry, was Bloomberg.
It appears, among other issues, that your agreement with President Xi over fentanyl will require a lot of trust and verification to ensure success, curbing those drug flows. I'm wondering, after today, and considering all that you've been through in the past year, would you say, Mr. President, that you trust President Xi? And secondly, if I could, on Taiwan, you and your administration officials have warned President Xi and China about interference in the upcoming election. I'm wondering, what would the consequences be if they do, in fact, interfere in the election?
Well, I had that discussion with him too, made it clear I didn't expect any interference, any at all. We had that discussion as he was leaving. Look, do I trust you? I trust but verify, as the old saying goes. That's where I am. And, we're in a competitive relationship, China and the United States. But my responsibility is to make this rational and manageable, so it doesn't result in conflict. That's what I'm all about. That's what this is about. To find a place where we can come together and where we find mutual interest but most importantly, from my perspective, that are in the interest of the American people. That's what this is about. And that's exactly what we'll do. We're in a situation where we agreed that fentanyl and its precursors will be curbed substantially, and the pill presses. That's a big movement. They're doing that. And by the way, I guess I shouldn't identify where it occurred, but John, I know two people near where I live. Their kids literally, as I said, exchanges where they woke up dead. Someone had inserted in, whether the young man did or not, inserted in a drug he was taking, fentanyl. Again, I hope you don't have any experience with knowing anyone, but this is the largest killer. People in that age category. And, I guess the other thing I think is most important is that since I spent more time with President Xi than any world leader has, just because we were vice presidents. His president was President Hu. I'm not making a joke. President Hu and President Obama thought we should get to know one another. It wasn't appropriate for the President of the United States to be walking in with the Vice President. So we met, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 68 hours of just face-to-face, just us and a simultaneous interpreter. So I think I know the man, I know his modus operandi. He's been, we have disagreements. He has a different view than I have on a lot of things, but he's been straight. I don't mean that it's good, bad, or indifferent, just been straight. And we, as I said, the thing that I find most assuring is he raised, and I fully agree, that neither one of us have any concern, Mr. Ambassador, any concern about anything between our nations or happening in our region. We should pick up the phone and call one another, and we'll take the call. That's an important progress. I'm embarrassed. I think it's CBS, but I can't remember who was CBS. I'm sorry.
Mr. President,
sorry. I apologize.
In stress or not the past years, there's one been flying Russian aircraft and ramp up very active. If that
You're listening to live special coverage from NPR News.
Is what issue warning and
well, first of all, none of it did end up in a conflict, number one. Number two, you may recall I did a few little things like get the quad together allow Australia to have access to new submarines, moving in the direction of working with the Philippines. So our actions speak louder than our words. He fully understands.
About as it and out bus that is there. This week we also said that us protect hospitals. So when you weigh the target against the number of civilians by the hospital, is the operation way just?
Well, look, we did discuss this, by the way, but we can't let it get out of control. Here's the situation. You have a circumstance where the first war crime is being committed by Hamas by having their headquarters, their military, hidden under a hospital. And that's a fact. That's what's happening. Israel did not go in with a large number of troops, did not raid, did not rush everything down. They've gone in, and they've gone in with their soldiers carrying weapons or guns. They were let me be precise. We discussed the need for them to be incredibly careful. You have a circumstance where you know there is a fair number of Hamas terrorists. Hamas has already said publicly that they plan on attacking Israel again, like they did before, where you're cutting babies' heads off to burning women and children alive. And so the idea that they're going to just stop and not do anything is not realistic. This is not the carpet bombing. This is a different thing. They're going through these tunnels. They're going into the hospital. And if you notice, I was mildly preoccupied today. I apologize. I didn't see everything. But what I did see, whether I haven't had it confirmed yet, I am asked my team to answer the question. But what happened is they're also bringing in incubators. We're bringing in other means to help people in the hospital, and they've given the doctors and, I'm told, the doctors and nurses and personnel an opportunity to get out of harm's way. So this is a different story than I believe was occurring before with indiscriminate bombing. What do you got? Washington Post. I think that's right. Oh, there you are. Sorry, couldn't see in the light.
Israel's war in Gaza, more than 11,000 Palestinians just for a month, and
I'm sorry, you're breaking up, I think.
Israel's war in Gaza has killed more than 11,000 Palestinians just over a month and created a humanitarian disaster. Israeli officials have said this war could take months or even years. Have you communicated to Prime Minister Netanyahu any sort of deadline or time frame for how long you are willing to support Israel in this operation? Are you comfortable with the operation going on indefinitely, and is there any deal underway to free hostages? Thank you.
Yes, no, working backwards, forward. Look, I have been deeply involved in moving on the hostage negotiation, and I don't want to get ahead of myself here because I don't know what's happened in the last 4 hours, but we've gotten great cooperation from the Qataris. I've spoken with them as well a number of times. I think the pause and that the Israelis have agreed to it down to, I'm getting too much detail. I know, Mr. Secretary, I'm going to stop. But I am mildly hopeful. With regard to when is this going to stop? I think it's going to stop when Hamas no longer maintains the capacity to murder, abuse, and just do horrific things to the Israelis. And they still think that, at least as of this morning, they still thought they could. I guess the best way for me to say it is that I take a look. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, acknowledges they have an obligation to use as much caution as they can in going after their targets. It's not like they're rushing in the hospital, knocking down doors and, you know, pulling people aside and shooting people indiscriminately. But Hamas, as I said they plan on attacking Israelis again. And this is a terrible dilemma. So what do you do? I think that Israel is also taking risks themselves about their folks being killed one-to-one going through these hospital rooms, hospital halls. But one thing has been established is that Hamas does have headquarters, weapons, material below this hospital, and I suspect others. But how long it's going to last, I don't know. Look, I made it clear to the Israelis that to Bibi and to his war cabinet that I think the only ultimate answer here is a two-state solution. It's real. We got to get to the point where there is an ability to be able to even talk without worrying about whether or not we're just dealing with, they're dealing with Hamas that's going to engage in the same activities they did over the past, on the 7th. So it's, but I can't tell, I'm not a fortune teller, I can't tell you how long it's going to last. But I can tell you I don't think it ultimately ends until there's a two-state solution. I made it clear to the Israelis I think it's a big mistake for them to think they're going to occupy Gaza and maintain Gaza. I don't think that works. And so I think you're going to see efforts to bring along, well, I shouldn't go into it anymore because that's things I've been negotiating with Arab countries and others about what the next steps are. But anyway, thank you all very much. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. This ends the press conference. All right, you have been listening to live special coverage from NPR News. I'm Elsa Chang, and we just heard a press conference from President Biden following his first face-to-face meeting in a year with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. This happened while the two leaders are attending the APEC summit. That's the annual meeting of the 21 economies that make up the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. And joining me now to help us understand the stakes of that meeting and other issues that President Biden discussed at this press conference are NPR international correspondent John Ruich and NPR national political correspondent Mara Leisen. Hi to both of you.
Hi there. Hi again.
All right, Mara, I want to start with you. I mean, we said this earlier. Normally, a first face-to-face meeting between the Chinese leader and the U.S. leader would be dominating the headlines, but tonight Biden did face a bunch of questions on his support for Israel, as Israel's been responding to the October 7th attack by Hamas. What stood out to you tonight about what President Biden said on that front?
On the Israel-Hamas war, I thought that his statement at the end, where he said he has communicated to Bibi Netanyahu that it will only ultimately end when there's a two-state solution. He says, I made it clear to the Israelis, I think it's a big mistake for you to think that you're going to occupy Gaza and maintain this. It doesn't work. And he said that he's been talking to the Arab leaders about this. This is what the world has been waiting for. We know that Hamas and Israel agree that neither of them want a two-state solution. And that's untenable. So who's going to come in, the U.S., Qatar, the UAE, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and say, okay, we're going to guarantee the security in Gaza, we're going to make sure that they are not an armed terrorist launching pad, and we're going to, with a more cooperative Israeli government, right now the whole Israeli government is vehemently against two states. They've been expanding settlements like crazy, which of course is the way you undermine any possibility of two states in the future. But that the rest of the world says the only way this works is if you figure out a way for two peoples to solve this centuries-long territorial dispute and live in peace together.
And just to be
that's
very
what I thought
clear,
was
Mara,
important.
Just to be very clear, is this the strongest case you've ever heard President Biden make for a two-state solution?
Since October 7th? Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Now, I don't know if this is the strongest statement he's ever made. You'd have to ask somebody else on that one. But yeah, I think since October 7th, this is the strongest. Is that fair to my colleagues here who maybe know better than me? But that's what it seemed like to me.
Certainly since October 7th. Well,
yeah, since
also,
October 7th.
Hamas took several hostages, as we know, during its October 7th attack. What did Biden say about those hostages and about when Israel's military action would stop or should stop?
Well, he has talked about this before. He said, I'm mildly hopeful. He said that there are negotiations underway to free the hostages. And I don't think that's new. You know, he said that before. He said he's hopeful before. And he was also asked, when will this stop? And he said, when Hamas no longer can do horrific things to Israel. So that means he doesn't know how long it'll go on. But there is a point at which, after this point, Israel has so little support internationally that it becomes a real problem. So clearly he would like a quick end to this and also an agreement to free the hostages.
Okay. John Ruich, I want to bring you in, not to talk about the war between Israel and Hamas, but to talk about the first face-to-face meeting between Xi Jinping and President Biden in a year. I guess, you know, we talked about, is this going to move the needle or not? Given President Biden's summary of what the two leaders discussed, what do you think? How did these talks go in terms of Xi Jinping's interests? What do you think?
Well, expectations were really low going into this. As we talked about earlier, I think they didn't come out with nothing. They came out with something. And we've heard, you know, we heard Biden on this. We haven't heard exactly what Xi Jinping and the Chinese side went in with and wanted out of this. There has been a readout from the Chinese state media that seems pretty positive. They called the talks candid and in-depth. They did outline the points of agreement, that there's going to be a dialogue on artificial intelligence, that drug enforcement cooperation is starting up again, that those military to military high-level discussions are going to resume, as well as cooperation there. But it does seem like there was this posing, you know, paraphrasing of one thing that Xi Jinping said, which was that there's sort of a choice that the two countries can work together, or they can have a zero-sum mentality, and it can all go downhill from there, which suggests that, you know, from the Chinese perspective, it's still a work in progress.
Right.
We also didn't get a lot of information from President Biden about the discussion around Taiwan. I assume that there weren't major shifts or any big movement. Didn't sound like it from President Biden on positions on either side on that issue.
Can I ask a little bit about Taiwan? Because we did hear President Biden say that he told the leader of China, Xi Jinping, not to interfere with Taiwan's election. I mean, how much has there been a precedent of evidence showing that China has directly interfered with previous elections in Taiwan? Is that a real threat to the election security in Taiwan, to disinformation, the spread of misinformation in Taiwan as this election approaches? What's your sense of how big of a threat Chinese interference in Taiwan's presidential election is?
I think in Taiwan they do think it's a big threat, that there are difficulties nailing down exactly where sort of misinformation and disinformation come from. Right? The suspicion, I think, in a lot of cases is that it comes from China, but Taiwan, unlike mainland China, has an open internet, and it's not as monitored or controlled, obviously, as it is over across the Taiwan Strait. So I think they take the threat seriously, and they put up precautions and are monitoring closely. And the expectation is that China has done this and will do this. But I think there are also questions around whether or not it ends up working in China's interest. So, for instance, the last couple of elections have returned Tsai Ing-wen, who's a candidate from the Democratic Progressive Party, and Beijing hates her.
Well, on the Taiwan question, and this is either a question to you, John, or to Mara, do you get the sense that this meeting today did anything to smooth out the relationship between the U.S. and China over the Taiwan question? Or is it just sort of a reiteration of, yep, business as usual, one China policy? What's your sense?
That was what I took away. Yeah,
that's exactly what I took away.
I mean, he just reiterated it and add anything. It's like, I just reiterated the policy. I would say overall, it's a good thing when two nuclear powers who are on opposite sides of lots of global conflicts decide that they're going to have communications between their militaries, and they're also going to pick up the phone and talk to each other, leader to leader. That's good. I just don't think we got anything new or different on Taiwan.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It sounds like it was the same. However, we do have the election coming up in 2 months, and a big part of, at least what the U.S. was saying, these talks between Xi and Biden are about is understanding the position and expectations of the other. And President Biden made very clear that he told Xi Jinping he didn't expect to see any interference, as you pointed out, Elsa.
Okay. And with respect to our election that's going to be coming up in 2024, I want to talk about fentanyl really quickly in just about the next 20 seconds, Mara. As we know, this talk raised the issue of China trying to better control the flow of fentanyl around the world. How much do you get the sense that fentanyl is going to play as an election issue?
Oh, fentanyl is a big issue. Fentanyl is a death of despair. It's killing people, especially in red states. And the original, he said fentanyl direct imports went down. Now we have to talk about the precursor chemicals. Let's see if it makes a difference.
All right. You've been listening to live special coverage from NPR News. I want to thank NPR's Mara Eliason, John Ruich, and before that, Tamara Heath, for all their reporting and analysis tonight on President Biden's remarks following his face-to-face meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. You can find more analysis tomorrow on NPR's Morning Edition. This is NPR News.
Good evening. At 8:48, it's 53 degrees in Cincinnati. You're listening to 91.7 WVXU. I'm Oakley Scott. We've been listening to live NPR special coverage of President Biden's news conference from California, following his day full of meetings with President Xi Jinping of China. We now rejoin Cincinnati edition, already in progress.
Sacrifices to the goddesses, and so this dreadful sort of